demand. And hopefully we can get this thing going. All right. There we go. Get that out of the way here. There we go. All right, sorry about that start here, but ultimately we're talking a little bit about demand. And again, demand is when we start working on, we transition here a little bit more into the intricacies of microeconomics. And we start about demand, we're talking about consumers in the marketplace. And so we have to think about it from that perspective. How would a consumer react? We're the ones that are out there demanding things. We are the consumers of products. And so just think about it from that perspective. In this particular lecture, there are some questions I'm going to have you answer. What I would like you to do is answer these questions on a separate sheet of paper and then bring that in. That's what you will turn in as your assignment for this particular video that we're going to watch. Okay, so as you're going through, there'll be some questions. If you need to pause the video at that point, certainly fine. And then you can answer those questions. All right, so starting with demand, this is in chapter 4 in your textbook. First of all, what is it? Well, demand is your ability and willingness to buy something. So, what are things that we would demand? And obviously, again, this varies by each individual person, but you're talking about, it could be fast food. It could be a particular clothing that you want to buy. It could be, any one of your needs and wants falls into this area of demand. And so, but again, this is the ability and willingness for us to buy or purchase something, okay? And that's what we're looking at when we look at demand. Now, what happens is that we can develop what are called demand schedules and demand curves. And basically, a demand schedule is a table, for lack of a better word, that's going to tell us at every level of price how much consumers might demand of that particular product, okay? And again, one thing we have to keep in mind here is that we're in a little bit of a vacuum when we first look at these. In other words, again, we've talked about economics as a science, and so it's a social science, and so when we study things, we have to be doing that based on this concept that this is a vacuum. We're just looking at this particular product, and then we'll start expanding out as we go. So here, for example, is a demand schedule. And again, economists use a product called widgets. It's fake. It's not a real product. We'll say this is a demand schedule for widgets. What's a widget? I don't know, whatever you want it to be. But you can see that for every price that's listed, it shows you how many that people will want to buy, the demand for that particular product at each individual price. So at $20, we're going to buy 2. 18 we'll buy 3, and so on and so forth. This is a demand schedule. So you could study this. You could go out and look at this and develop a demand schedule for any product you wanted. Pencils, put the numbers in there. How much do people want? How many McDonald's hamburgers? Well, it depends on how much they're priced at and how many people will buy. So they will look at a demand schedule. Again, this is one for a fake product, widgets, and you can see that as the price starts to go down, people will demand more, okay? And you can see that on this schedule. Again, these can be set up and developed by study, by looking at and asking people how much or watching them work in the marketplace. What is a demand curve? So we take that schedule and we're going to turn it into something we can chart and graph. And so what a demand curve does is it takes the demand schedule and shows the quantity demanded at each possible price. So again, you'll take all those numbers we looked at on the screen before. So you go back to here, this numbers, all these numbers, and then you just are going to plot it onto a curve and basically give us the same information, and it would look something like this, okay? Now, this is a demand line. It's not a curve. However, it's not uncommon for there to be some curvature to a demand curve. And so that's why we use that word. And this one, the way it's set up, it's a straight line. And again, all that we did was we took that demand schedule and we plotted. You'll notice that on the axis, the vertical axis, you'll notice we've applied pricing. On the horizontal axis, we've got the units, okay? Now, so you can see this relationship based on the fact that we put price on the vertical and units on the horizontal. And so you see that the demand curve is always going to be sloping from high to low. And again, the concept is as the price begins to drop, we will demand more. Okay, and so you can see how this is working out. Again, it's very important to note that vertical axis over there on the left side, that is your price line, and then on the bottom is your quantities demanded across the bottom there. And so typically we'll use P and Q to describe those, or sometimes people use the dollar symbol instead of P on that vertical line. But Q is often put on the bottom because that's going to be the quantity. So you can see this demand curve, and this relates directly back to that demand schedule we had earlier. Okay, and so you can see, again, this is the demand curve for that widget product. So that very simply helps us to understand the law of demand. And if you think about it, it makes sense, okay? That the demand for a product varies inversely with its price, okay? So basically, the higher the price of something, the less we are inclined to buy it. And the lower the price of something, the more we want to buy. And again, that makes sense, right? Why do we shop at a sale? Well, because it's a little less. Why do we tend to buy more things when the price goes down? Well, because they cost a little bit less, okay? And so there's exact reasons for that we'll get to in a minute, but this is the law of demand. It's a very natural thing, and it's pretty rational. It makes sense if you're thinking about it from the consumer side. And again, I'm going to go back to the curve. You can see this dictated on the curve. The lower the price, you see as we move from left to right, you can see that the demand for that particular product goes up. Again, this is a pretty straightforward concept, but it's very important to understand that as a consumer, as prices go down, we tend to buy more. Okay? That's the law of demand. Now, what I would like you to do here on this first question, again, this will be the first one you can write out. Again, you're just going to give me 5 products that are heavily influenced by price, and then tell me why. Again, at this point, you're sort of speculating a little bit. I would actually like you to answer this question before you move on to the next stuff, because I'm going to give away a little bit of how this happens. But just sort of speculate. Pick 5 things that you think are heavily influenced by price, and then tell me why, just in a real quick sentence, why those things might be that way. Okay? Again, chance to pause to answer the question. I'm going to move forward. After you answer question 1, move to the next slide. So as we talk about change in quantity demanded. Now, one of the things that I want to point out here, you guys, is that we're going to use 2 terms or 2 phrases to describe movement in demand. And the first is this, change in quantity demanded. And this is basically the change in the quantity of the product purchased in response to a change in price. Okay, and again, you guys, I want you to really, I put it in red here, but I want you to circle the word price. Whenever you see change in quantity demanded, we are talking about some type of change in the price of the product. Okay, again, quantity demanded is related to the price. So why would quantity demanded change? Again, it's a price question. So here it is on a curve. In this particular example we have in front of you, we've got an initial price of $17. You can see that's the upper circle there. And at that point, we want about, I don't know, 2 3/4 of the product or somewhere in there, right? It's just before 3. As we drop the price down to 12, you can see that the quantity demanded increases. And the price goes down to 12, and you can see that we move our amount purchased or our quantity bought till, I don't know, looks like maybe 13, somewhere in there. And again, by changing that price, what we are doing is we are moving along the demand curve. Remember, all we did here was change the price. So you can see how that's moving along the curve from that first red 0 up at the top there at $17 down to the bottom 0 there at 12. You can see that all we did, we changed the price, and that's going to change the quantity demanded. Okay, so I want to really keep that in mind. You're talking about the change in quantity demanded based on price. That concept is very, very critical. Okay? All right, so now we got to talk about why this happens. All right, so there's 2 reasons that this happens. And again, it's natural. It's part of the law of demand. It makes total sense. But there are 2 kind of terminology areas here that we got to get. First is something called the income effect. One of the reasons that we're willing to buy more of something is because when that price drops, it alters your real income. You start thinking about staples, products that you have to buy. This might be food is probably the easiest one. So let's say, bread, like you like toast or something, right? So if you buy toast or bread every time you go to the store, and if you go in there and the price of bread drops significantly, well, what that does is that changes how much income you have because you've allotted some of your income to go towards bread. And so if all of a sudden that bread, you can buy more bread with your same dollar. Well, that affects your total income. And so your likelihood of buying more bread increases. Okay, so that's called the income effect. We're overall changing how much money you have because the price of something you normally buy has gone down. The second is the substitution effect. And this change occurs because of the relative price of the product. Okay, now, you would have an opportunity to maybe buy something else. And again, this is when you're looking at, let's say, items that are similar, like wheat bread of one brand versus wheat bread of another. Okay, so in that case, the substitution effect is that relative to other breads, this is a much better deal, and so I may go and buy a little bit more of it. And so as you're shopping for food, the substitution effect may come into play. This might happen more likely in an area where there's a lot of choices. Like if you really like fruit, and you could do peaches or nectarines. Well, if the price of peaches drop relative to the price of nectarines, you're going to buy more of those. Okay, so that's the substitution effect. Again, as that price goes down, you're willing to relatively, the price of that product to other things has gone down, so you're going to buy a few more of them. Okay, again, I want to emphasize these are all price issues, and they're all related to change in quantity demanded. Okay, that is the critical part. Now, number two, I want you to, kind of thinking through here a little bit. Prices for iPads dropped to 200. How is this affecting demand and why? Okay, pretty straightforward question. We just covered it. Prices for iPads dropped to 200. How would this affect demand and why? All right, now, excuse me. We also have problems, or we also have to talk about change in demand. Sometimes this occurs not related to the price. And so when we talk about change in demand, we're talking about other effects not directly related to the price. So again, there's any number of things. We're going to cover them here in a minute. But again, I want you to realize we are missing a very key term here. It's not saying change in quantity demanded. That's a price issue. This is change in demand. It has nothing to do with the price of the product. Something else is happening that's causing a change in demand. Now, we signify this on our curve by shifting an entire curve out or in, either to the right or to the left. So again, we're not talking about a price change. Something else is causing a change in demand, so that every single price point, if our curve shifts to the right, we will demand more. And again, if you look at that black curve and the red one to the right, you can't when you move out there at every single price point, you will demand more. In the opposite, if you look on that bottom curve there on the furthest one down to the left, we've shifted to the left. Every price point for our product, this is related to other issues, and we're going to go through those here in a second. Okay, so change in demand shifts the curve. Change in quantity demanded is shift along the curve. So 6 reasons why this might happen. And so we're going to talk about this a little bit. Again, 1, consumer income goes up. Now this could be, again, we're talking about in vacuums here a little bit. So for you personally, this may mean something as simple as a raise. For the society, it could be that the economy is going well, right? For example, in today's recession, right, there are not as many people, going out to really nice restaurants. And so because of that, across the board at restaurants like Ruth's Chris or really high-end restaurants, demand has shifted to the left because consumer incomes are not what they once were. Okay, so that becomes a little bit of an issue. All right, so consumer income is a factor that could shift demand. You see massive changes in consumer income going up, you're going to see that demand curve shift out to the right. Number 2, taste. This is like the new thing. Okay, so trends, fads, things you have to have. Okay, and again, for companies, finding these niches is really important. But consumer taste certainly would affect demand. If all of a sudden there is a trend that you guys want to wear skinny jeans, well, okay, then what's going to happen is at every price point we're going to spend a little bit more for that type of jean. Okay, and so that trend goes that direction. Things you have to have falls. Again, this is where teenagers are certainly the peer pressure element comes into play here. So consumer taste would change demand. Number 3, substitutes. Okay, now if we were talking about the demand for a particular product, let's say butter, and then we said, we found out that all of a sudden the price of margarine dramatically goes up. I don't know, something happens. There's the production of the way that it's being produced, the factory that produces margarine catches on fire, whatever it is. If all of a sudden there's a huge increase in the price of margarine, that would affect our demand for butter because we can interchange those two products. And because we can interchange them, if the price of margarine were to go up, then we would, at every price point, we would shift out on how much we would buy butter. Okay, so you can see those are substitute items, something you could buy instead of another. All right, and so the demand for one is affected by the price of the other product. Another thing that's similar to that, but it sort of works in conjunction, is complements. Okay, and you see this quite a bit in grocery stores, and I hate to keep going to food. It's after lunch. I've already eaten. I don't know why I'm talking about food so much, but this idea that hot dogs and mustard, okay, people that eat ketchup on hot dogs, first of all, shouldn't be having hot dogs. So you should be eating mustard on your hot dog. But regardless, these are complements. And so if the price of hot dogs were to drop, it's not unlikely that the demand for mustard would go up because people eat mustard with hot dogs. Or maybe a better example might be hot dog buns. And so it's not unlikely that in your supermarket, they may put a sale on hot dog buns and put them on a cart and place them near hot dogs so that you'll buy the other product. Again, hot dog prices go down, the demand for mustard is going to go up regardless of the price, okay? And that's the fact that complements have a role here. Now, that leads us into our next question, and that is this. I want you to give me 5 products. You can't use butter and margarine. You can't use the ones I just did with hot dogs. But I want you to tell me 5 products that would be considered substitutes for one another. And this can just be in list form, okay? You can just list them off. Give me 5 substitute products. And then give me 5 products that you would consider to be complements, okay? Just you kind of give me an idea. What do you think would be complementary products for one another? 2 other reasons why the change in demand can occur. Number 5, consumer expectations. Again, this is the idea of looking at and speculating on the market. This could be a new technology. For example, right now, there may be a lower demand for iPhones because there's some speculation that in the upcoming future, there's going to be a new version of the iPhone 5. And so that new technology is pending out there. And so the possibility is, or the reality of it is that right now our demand curve is probably shifted a little bit to the left. Regardless of price, we probably aren't going to buy as many iPhones right now because there's a pending new technology. This happens a lot with farmers and their chances to speculate on what the value of their products are going to be when they come out of the fields. And so crop reports have an effect on demand. For example, if we hear that maybe it's going to be a bad year for oranges, well, we may want to go out and buy some oranges right now so we can get the last ones before they're gone. Something like that. And so that may increase demand. So consumer expectations out there. And then finally is number of consumers. And again, this could go a couple different ways. One is we could have a population boom. And certainly you guys know that the baby boomer generation, really your parents, my parents, I guess yours are maybe not there, but mine certainly are in that baby boomer generation. That's a population boom. And so the demand for products that those people need is on an upswing. Right now, that happens to be things like healthcare. It also happens to be things like facilities for older people to stay healthy, whether that's places like yoga or workout facilities that are intended for people who are maybe 45 to 65 or 50 to 65 in that area. And again, that's just because there's a lot of population in that age range, okay? The other way to look at the number of consumers is areas that are seasonally affected, okay? Like you think about Newport Beach or Balboa Island or something like that, right? During the summertime, there's an increase in visitors. And so the demand for everything that's sold in that region is going to go up regardless of price because there's just more people there, okay? So the influx of people, heck, you could think about a place like Disneyland, right? And during the Christmas vacation or summer period, right, when it's really busy there, there's a high demand. And so, you can just kind of recognize that would shift the demand curve outward during those windows of time. So you can see there the 6 reasons why we might have a change in demand. And again, I want to emphasize here, this is not about the price of the product we're looking at. This is about other factors, these 6 that we just went over in regards to change in demand. Okay, so here's my last question for you, and this is really going to lead into what we're going to do in class after you've done this assignment. And that is, I want you to think about the role price plays in demand. And I want you to think about a company, because it would seem like if you're a company and you want people to buy your products, you would do everything you can to keep the price down. But what I want you to think about is it possible for a company to raise prices on a product and earn more? And if so, what kind of products do you think would fall into this category? I really want you to kind of think about this question. This is probably the most difficult, I guess, question I've asked you on this sheet here. But I really want you to think about, how would I do this? Are there products out there where if I were to raise the price, we may actually make more money? And if so, what kind of products are those? Okay? All right, guys, that will wrap up our recording for today. And again, make sure you answer those 4 questions, bring them in, and turn those in when you come back to class.